That's the solution. What we're going to do is when St. Petersburg is speaking, they will turn their microphone on. And when Petersburg is not speaking, they will turn their microphone off. And that will solve the problem. Let's just do a quick audio check with them. We're good. And Centennial, guys, can you just raise a thumb? You can hear me clearly, right? Yeah, excellent. Okay, and I know we can hear you. Paul and everyone in Dublin, raise a thumb. Good? Yeah, okay. Excellent. Okay, so I think we're good, and we have everybody here for our class. Laptops closed, please. Great, okay. So, exactly. So we can have full concentration on the class, okay? Excellent. Okay. So I think we are ready to go. Let me make sure this does not fall. Okay, so I'll just get my little notes here, and then we're good. All right. Welcome, everybody, to our global class on another big issue that unites us all on planet Earth. And today's topic that we're going to look at with our guest, Ryan Turnbull, who's here with us, is the whole question of consumption or overconsumption on planet Earth. And as you know, when you come into a global class where we are essentially all together for 90 minutes from all parts of the world, and the idea is that what we're trying to do is think about the planet as one whole thing. And we happen to live at a time in history that is undeniable. The world has become a planet. It really is a planet now. We see the planet all the time. We go off the planet and we explore other parts of the universe or the solar system. We're about to colonize Mars, or begin at least a colony there in the next 20 years. And so that's what we do. We're humanity now in this class. We're all together trying to understand things about how we can share this planet and live on it properly. So what I would like to do is just mention today's problem that we're going to explore with Ryan. Ryan is a specialist in ethics. He's trained in it, schooled in it, has a growing firm in which he consults large organizations on difficult ethical choices, ethical responsibilities. He's got a big global mind as well. He's lived abroad, and he really understands this question of difficult ethical challenges that we now all face on planet Earth. So what really makes a global class come alive is when we have a problem and we problem solve. And Ryan is going to help us walk us through this issue today of the consumption of the planet's resources, the consumption of things all around us. You know, my notebook is a thing. This microphone is a thing. I'm wearing something. The students here, students in Centennial College in Toronto, in Dublin, in St. Petersburg, we all have computers now and technology. This is all stuff and things. And these things come from resources that we extract from the planet. So this creates stress. We want to understand how we can be more responsible in our consumption and in our waste that we make from this, so that we don't destroy things. That's basically it. How can we do that together? And I don't think there really is much more to say except that, Ryan, before I start, I want you to know that we had done a prep class last week with the students here where they, in teams, they thought about who might be responsible ultimately for consumption. And some of the comments that were made were that consumers, we the consumers, are ultimately responsible. Some said big corporations are responsible because they create the demand through advertising. They make us want things. It's government's responsibility. So the whole kind of range I asked students to think about some amazing facts about consumption on planet Earth. And we have, for example, a group said the United Nations predicts that the global population will reach about 11 billion by 2100, and household consumers are responsible for 60% of the planet's greenhouse gas emissions and 80% of the world's land, material, and water usage from the BBC. So that's just a little bit of information, okay? It's just a snippet. At any rate, I'm going to throw it over to Ryan to talk about these things in a much more kind of specific way, and then we're going to open things up and have what we always do in a global class is a really great interactive conversation that leads us to a point of insight and maybe some solutions to a big problem. Okay, so Brian, please go ahead.
Thanks, Lon. I'm glad to hear that you're having some meaningful discussions about this leading up to today. This is a problem I'm sure everybody is well aware of, and yet none of us are probably fully taking responsibility for the amount of consumption that we see all around us and that we participate in every day. I know myself, I'm just as guilty of it as anybody else, so there's no judgment in what I'm saying here. We're close and produce and waste and do all the things that most of us in our consumer society do. And so I think this is actually a norm. It's a behavioral norm that's become so entrenched in our societies, especially in Western societies, but it's in, you know, both the global North and global South are parts of this big system of what I would call overconsumption and overproduction, which has plagued us for quite some time. So the topic for today is really about curbing consumption, and whose responsibility is it anyways? I think this is a really worthwhile, intuitively clear as to whose responsibility it is. Yeah. So this, you know, I mean, I'm dealing with this in many of the projects that I'm working on with my company called Ecoethonomics, which, as Lon said, is growing, and we're dealing with food waste on a provincial level and looking at household food waste, which is 50% of the food waste in our society in Canada. And so it's just a large amount of organic waste which produces methane gas and is going into landfill often and you know, is contributing to greenhouse gas emissions and ultimately climate change. So, you know, that's just one, but there, you know, in the city of Toronto, there's 200,000, crazy. Yeah. And so that wood has been going into landfill and also, you know, is producing waste. You know, that's not necessarily an example of overconsumption, but, you know, there's lots of talk about, well, how do we utilize this waste and repurpose it and turn it into products, which, yeah. You know, and then we're working with Furniture Bank, which is, you know, basically collecting furniture waste and, you know, actually sort of upcycling furniture and repurposing it and trying to keep it out of landfills. This is like the products that, you know, go through their life cycle and it's sort of end of life, and it's like, what do we do with all these things that are sort of, you know, in Star Wars at the beginning where they have all the broken down androids and they're searching through all these, like almost swimming through all of this junk of electronic junk, right? And trying to find, you know, their robot. Anyways, it's you know, I have all these images in my mind, and I just, I think it's interesting because one of the pain points for me is as a homeowner and as a family, like, you know, a household, we, you know, the statistics often come in and say, well, you know, the households are the most responsible for the greatest amount of waste. And, you know, I kind of look at our society today and I think we're just surrounded by options and a culture and by social norms that require us. There isn't much of a way to get out of this system. Like, we're in it, we're stuck in this system where we, you know, everything about the way we live our lives forces us to overconsume. And this has been happening and growing in terms of a trend for quite some time, and I think there's lots of causes for that. So I'm not going to say too much more because I love the global classroom because I believe it flips the dynamic in the usual classroom and gets students like really engaged in exploring these issues, these global problems, and as Lon said, thinking about solutions. So I think the structure for today, as I envisioned it, was to share across our different contexts some different signs that we see of overproduction, overconsumption. And I have a couple stories, and I'm going to let you guys start. And then the next phase would be to sort of explain, how do we become this way? Like, really, like, what things contributed to this? And I think there's some things people know about, a couple things that Lon has already mentioned. There may be some other things as well that we haven't thought of. And then it's like, who's responsible for this? Like, it's easy to say citizens or consumers or people who own houses or something of this sort are the people that are responsible. Yeah. I think it's also interesting to explore, well, who are the other stakeholders that are responsible and what levels of responsibility do they have? And then lastly, how do we influence this consumption? And this is a problem coming up in the work that I'm doing all the time, where we're starting to say, well, how do we shift social norms related to overproduction and overconsumption? Just think about it. Maybe we all should just buy 80% less than what we do today.
80%.
Or 50%.
No, I'm going to put that. I'm going to put that down as just as an interesting challenge, and bring it back because it's a.
Well, the reason I said 80% was because I think it needs to be a significant enough target for us to look at systemic solutions. What we tend to do is look at incremental change. We give the population really easy tips and tools, and like if you did meal planning in your household a little bit better, or you knew a little bit more about storing your food, you would waste less.
Yes.
So this is one way of dealing with this, but it doesn't make a really significant dent. Anyhow, so I'll leave it at that. So towards the end of the conversation, we're hoping we get to some solutions.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So signs of overconsumption, overproduction. So I just want anybody to share a story, like an observation they've made. I'll start with one just to give you an example, okay? So it makes it easy. When I was traveling across Thailand, I went to a little island called Koh Phi Phi. And Koh Phi Phi, I don't know if anybody been to Koh Phi Phi?
In Centennial, there's somebody heading back in Centennial.
It's, I swear, probably the most beautiful oasis in the world. Like it is where they filmed the movie The Beach. I think it's called Beaches or something.
I want to go.
And it has, anyways, so it's a protected site. You cannot live there or stay there. You can only go in on boats and visit. But every year there's thousands, or probably actually millions of plastic bottles that wash up on the shores of this protected sanctuary. It is honestly, like, if I showed you the pictures, you would just be like in awe, because it's the most beautiful place I've ever seen. And it is being ruined just by plastic bottles that wash up on the shores. This to me is just a sign of overproduction, overconsumption. So that's an example. Anybody have another one to share?
Great, thank you, Ryan. And feel free. It always takes a little time to get going in a global class in terms of students feeling a bit comfortable. I might share a story too, but I really don't want to talk much. So, Paul, is there anything in Dublin? Go ahead.
Yeah, Lon. We had a conversation about this yesterday, just in preparation for the class, and we were interested in the amount of waste here in Dublin or in Ireland, food waste. So one of the students here, Ryan, who'll introduce himself now, he has a figure actually for Ireland.
I'm Ryan. Yesterday we found out that there's 1 million tonnes of food waste produced in Ireland every year.
1 million tons? I just want to get that down correctly. 1 million tons of food waste
1 million
year?
tons every year.
1 million tons. Whoa. Okay. Yeah.
Food waste.
Go ahead. Sorry.
People buying too much food and then having to throw it out. And given that so many people are hungry in the world, it's scandalous, really.
Anything else? Ryan, do you want to add anything in Dublin, or Paul, or anybody else before we move around? No? Okay. You don't have to. Okay. Great. All right. So 1 million tons of food waste, 100 million tons of food waste annually in Ireland. Let's go to St. Petersburg in Russia.
1 million.
We're 100 million. I think that's what he said, 100 million. Absolutely. Yeah. 100, let me just make, sometimes I'm having an over 50-year-old moment, and I may not, is it 100 million tons annually of food waste? Is that correct? 1 million.
Just one.
Okay.
Yeah, 100 million.
One million.
1 million annually a day, or 1 million a day, 1 million a year?
A year.
1 million a year.
A year, okay. Okay, that's a lot less, but
It's a lot less than what you said, but it's still
because
a lot.
there's an image I have of it has been said that the amount of waste that we produce on this planet every day is equivalent to if you took a number of trucks, just regular cement trucks or dump trucks, and you line them bumper to bumper going across Canada, which is about 4,000 miles from one coast to another, and you line them up bumper to bumper, filling them with garbage. That would be the amount of waste produced every day on planet Earth by humanity. Anyways, okay, so in St. Petersburg, where do you see overconsumption? Examples of overconsumption in St. Petersburg or in Russia?
So usually we have 10 days of holidays after New Year's Day, and at these days people just sitting down at their houses and eat too much, drink too much alcohol, and just sit in their neighbors. So there is overconsumption of food, and there are actually lots of food that just wasted because it's not good enough and it's not fresh enough. So we can say that about milk or other dairy products. So there are lots of overconsumption of food in holidays, actually.
We can also see overconsumption in our everyday life. For example, actually many Russian families have 2, 3, or even 4 TVs, even if they use it 1 or 3 or 2 times a week, and use only 1 or 2 of them. So it's a bit strange, but it's it's so.
In addition to our basic essentials like eating food and drinking water, we consume an ever-increasing amount of goods and services. For instance, appliances, smartphones, clothes, travel and entertainment. This list might be endless if you think up more things.
Okay, I can also add that I think that it is a real serious problem that advertising make us think that the things that we bought, for example, 1 month ago, they are already old and they are not good enough for other people, and we think that we are not beautiful enough, these things are not suitable for us, and we think that these things are old and we want to be up to date, to be fashionable, and we buy more and more things and throw away the other ones that we have bought already.
Okay, yes, and many people suffer from envy, and we want to improve our level of life, but in this competition we forget about the exhaustion of resources. So we have these problems.
That's great. Is there anybody else? That you've given some a lot to work with for all of us. Thank you, all of you. And we're going to go now to Toronto, Centennial College, and folks, how about somebody there take a run at this question about where do you see overconsumption example, just an example in your life? Anybody want to try to answer that? Go ahead. Sure. Please.
I'm not sure if you hear me. Are you able to hear me?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Okay. Well, basically, you can see overconsumption in everyday life. You're looking at toiletries. You're looking at makeup. You're looking at car production, which causes carbon emissions. And on top of which, in order, speaking of carbon emissions, the production of cars, we're trying to find other sustainable ways of eliminating carbon emissions. And we're looking at electric cars, but what is the cost of the environmental damage and resources to make those specific cars with lithium involved, right? So those are some things that are around us today that I've taken notice of. Anybody else?
What's your name, by the way? Sorry, what's your name? Pamela?
Samantha.
Samantha, okay. Samantha, thanks a lot. Okay.
No problem.
Anybody else at Centennial? And then we'll come to Dublin. I see a hand in Dublin. Centennial, anyone else want to add to what Samantha said?
You want to say something?
Actually, yes. I noticed per person a vehicle numbers. Like in Canada, the total numbers of vehicles are 36 million. And almost that's the population of Canada. So per person there's a vehicle. We are not using much public transport, and that's the amount of overconsumption we are using in vehicles.
That's a great detail. What's your name?
Sam.
Oh, so you're Sam and she's Samantha?
Yeah.
That's easy. That is really easy. Okay, thank you. Somebody's looking out for us. We'll go to Dublin and then come back. So there was a handout in Dublin. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I'm Thomas. I've noticed a big overproduction of mobile phones, in a sense that nearly every mobile phone just sends a message and makes a call, but all the other phones just do one different thing, as in like a better picture. But the main reason of a mobile phone is to call and message.
For sure. Good point.
Yeah.
Anyone else in Dublin? And then we're going to come back to Ryan because he needs to help. Here, okay. Avery's got a comment here, and then we'll let, go ahead,
I
Avery.
just have a small point to that, because I've heard it brought up a couple times now how almost the analyzation of things like cell phones, but you also have to look at the rate of acceleration with technology. You go back to, what was it, the 1960s with the space race. It took a computer bigger than the size of this room to launch that. 20 years later, you have the Nintendo Entertainment System box the size that could have done that. Now we have a cell phone which has 6 gigabytes of RAM in it, which can run most PC games in terms of RAM. So the rapid expansion of how technology evolves, I don't think it's necessarily just, although some companies do small changes, for the most part, each new iteration of a cell phone is a big leap in technology, and why we're constantly upgrading and changing the newest model, because it's such a leap and bound in technology from year to year.
I remember growing up, for example, that you would have a separate machine, you would have your phone, you would have a television, you'd have a typewriter, electric typewriter, eventually fax machines came, and then you had the fax machine, you'd have the VHS machine, you'd have all these different devices, and what you're saying is that we're shrinking these all into one small thing. So that means less stuff rather than more?
Really now, you could do almost everything you want. Your cell phone, a TV, and a PlayStation, if that's your prerogative, or an Xbox or a PC, because really cable's on the way out with things like Netflix and Kodi allowing you to stream anything you want at any point in the day. So there's no longer a need for a cable box. All your other entertainment needs can be met in that same PC or gaming console, which means you only need one TV, and everything else can be met on a cell phone. So really, although we have an annualization, since the technology is getting so advanced, there's less need for more and just more of a need for keeping up to date.
Okay, so things are getting better, and that's so you're saying you're an optimist here in the sense of okay, good. Excellent point, Dave. Natasha, go ahead. Do we have a microphone? Just make sure they can hear her. Go ahead.
Looking good.
Yeah, good. Go ahead, Natasha.
When I heard this topic of overconsumption, I thought of everything that was being said, but I also thought of the internet.
Yes.
So we are being groomed to overconsume in regarding the internet. So we don't do anything about the problems that we're speaking on right now. So we're just gonna be like WALL-E, if anybody's seen that movie.
Who's seen the movie WALL-E? Has anyone raised a hand who's seen it? It was actually almost won an Academy Award, one of the great animated films. In St. Petersburg, you may not, I don't know if it was released there. Have you seen the movie WALL-E? Anybody in St. Petersburg? Do you know the movie WALL-E? Sort of? Kate? Yes? Oh, you do? Okay, great.
So that's
okay. Good. So they know. Yeah, I wasn't sure. Go ahead. Yeah.
That's all.
All right. So we have interesting visions here of, you know, from Avery, it's positive. We're shrinking the goods, and then from Natasha, well, you know, we're sitting too much in front of the internet, and it's turning us into big blobs. You know, fat blobs that don't do anything. So, anyways, Abby.
Yeah. I have two things to say. First one is, I think it's a bit disingenuous to blame the society, because ultimately we are the society. So all we're doing when we say that advertisements and internet influences us is we're saying it's not our fault. It's someone else's fault because they convinced me to buy it. Nobody will produce any item if people don't want to buy it. Right? So no matter how many ads, how many products they put out, if people don't buy it, the market shuts down.
Okay. See, I think I know where you're going, which is the ultimate responsibility lies with the consumer, the individual. Okay, fair enough. I just want to make sure, because I see Mauricio, we've got some good comment. Do you want to throw the microphone back to, thanks. And then we've just started. Yeah. Okay, we've just started, but there's some very good comments. But Mauricio, go ahead.
Thank you. Well, talking about cell phones, you may want to buy the newest version of the iPhone because of 3 years to fix the things.
Yes.
Now you're forced to exchange, replace the things, not to fix them, to buy new one.
And I think I have a sense that where you're going is it's corporations that own these big companies that produce batteries or phones that are forcing us to buy things through the way they manufacture. So we've got some interest, right? It's a bit corporate. Okay. Yeah, let Ryan go, please.
I gotta say some things because I'm just holding it back, and I gotta say a few responses. So it's interesting. So one of the things that I think is good, just kind of an interesting indicator of how much we overproduce and overdo. And ask yourselves this: do we need 100 different types of salad dressing to choose from in our grocery store? So I don't know. Like, I'm challenging. Sorry, what was your name again?
Abhinav.
Abby. Or Abby?
Abby.
Yeah, Abby.
I was challenging Abby a little bit. Abby's point, and I think it's important. We need to challenge each other in these questions to have a good debate, right?
100%.
And so, you know, in my mind, I'm not actually sure whether what Abby said is completely true to me. I think there's a grain of truth in everything that everybody says. I also think that is it the case that we market research that there were people's, like, that there's certain flavors that, you know, resonated with people's taste buds, and, you know, that there was a small segment of the market that would produce enough of those, and that people value choice. I think this is actually a really key part of this conversation.
Sure.
Because if you think about overproduction, you're thinking about how many choices we have. And part of what kind of a free market economy does is it says, well, the market will produce only those things that consumers want, which is what I heard Abby say, and I think that's a common perception. So it's not like, you know, it's not like, I don't know, like it's not like you're the only one that shares that. I think there's a lot of people, there's a lot of economists out there that would say that free market economy is kind of going to regulate itself based on what consumers want and desire and ultimately purchase. So, but I think that's actually part of the problem for me. Like, I see that as part, that mentality and that paradigm that goes along with that market economy, free market economy model, as we call it market fundamentalism sometimes, that model actually gets us into trouble. And I think we have to deconstruct the problem with that being one maybe piece. So I see hands going up here. It's good. I push their button.
Yeah, and actually, Abby, hold on a sec, because we got to make this is a global class. We've got, I see Ireland going. I'm just going to make just one observation very briefly. He has touched on something that I think we're eventually going to go to, and that is called capitalism, and that's called the big economic system that connects the world. And that eventually is going to take us, I hate to say this, guys, it's going to take us to the United States. But we'll see. And it could take us to Russia. Because, guys, in Russia, you know, the United States and Russia, there's a lot of tension there around things that connect us. So let's go to Ireland. Yeah, or sorry.
Dublin.
Dublin, yeah. Dublin, go ahead, please. Yep.
Who wanted?
Hi, guys. This is Sean here. I was actually going to touch on America as well. I was going to talk about the Paris Agreement. I don't really agree with the fact that it's all down to consumers when you have people like Donald Trump who are completely disregarding the fact that we're trying to tackle consumption and carbon emissions and that, and it's kind of like taking one step forward and two steps back. I just really don't agree. I think that it is down to governments and the choices they make.
What's your name again? It's
Sean.
Sean. And
yeah.
Nice zoom in. Whoever zoomed in, Sean, good close up. Okay. It's great. Okay.
Give it back to Abby now, because he's itching.
Abby's itching, and he always has, and then we'll keep. So Abby, go ahead. All right.
So about the ranch dressing, I just have to say, like.
Salad dressing.
Salad dressing.
Oh, ranches. Yeah, ranch dressing, salad dressing. All right.
Salad dressing. If the company came out with like a rotten fish dressing, nobody would buy it. So as long as people don't buy a product, the product will collapse. There's no way for the company to put out a product if it doesn't make a profit, right?
Okay.
So the reason there are 100 different dressing is because people want 100 different dressing.
Oh, well, wait a minute. Okay, I'm going to. That's a very, very good question, and you may have to eat those words. You may have to
controversial underlying assumption.
Does anyone? First of all, let's go to St. Petersburg for a second. Guys, when you walk into a supermarket or a store to buy something for your vegetables or your salad or however you prepare, how many choices of salad dressing do you have in St. Petersburg?
She has some brands of vodka.
4 or 5 different companies which produce salads and other vegetables, and there's too much choice. Actually, yes, I agree with that. But usually we just rely on companies that we know more, and that's why the choice is usually between 2 things most of the time.
So companies.
Oh, she's going to say. Kate? You said you rely on companies
that she knows more.
You know more. You're more familiar with. Got you. Okay. Go ahead, guys. In St. Petersburg, go ahead.
Actually, we don't use. We don't buy salads, ready salads. We mostly buy fresh vegetables and make salads from them because it's sometimes these ready salads are not delicious enough and not fresh. Yes, so it's more easily and more delicious to make your own salad as you want to do that.
Thank you. No?
It's not offensive.
Okay, so the question, though, I think we need to ask is, do you need to have 100 salad dressing choices? Do you really need that? Because Abby was saying that's what we want. We actually want 100 salad dressings to choose from. Do you agree with that at Centennial College? You agree that we need 100 salad dressing choices?
We don't need it. We want it.
We want it. Okay. Do we want it? Does someone want to answer that? Go ahead, Samantha.
I don't know. I think it's kind of bothering me, the topic of overconsumption and hitting it from the top, like just skimming it from you know, what we see on a day-to-day basis. And it kind of bothers me. I'm sorry if I'm being a little bit. But I think what we have to look at are our natural resources and how we're utilizing these natural resources in order to make these things. And that's how, and like, I mean, I'm sorry, but I mean, like, there's about, what, 7.5 billion people living on the planet, right?
About that, and it's actually getting close to growing at 80 million annually. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, like, I think we have to nip it where it starts. And I think that, I can't really articulate what I'm trying to say here, but I think that it's just a superficial thing. You know what I mean? What kind of salad dressings you want, how many types of clothing pieces you want, from what brand do you want to get it from. Like that is not it's not where it starts, right? So it starts from our natural resources, right?
Okay.
And then it kind of grows in. And in between you have the government. And I feel that the government has kind of created this system where they've already manufactured everything so that consumers, like they know that consumers are going to want these things. We have 7.5 billion people in the last, like, was it 2 months ago or something like that, on the planet. You know what I mean? They've already constructed this to make it that way. And the masses are agreeing with what they want. That's the marketing, right?
Sure.
So I'm not sure if you get what I speak in.
No, Samantha, this is great. Brian?
This is a segue into the next part of the
Go ahead.
conversation. It's
Please.
perfect that this is. I'm glad it's annoying you, because it's supposed to annoy you. I think these are just signs and signals that we overconsume. The salad dressing is not necessarily meant as part of the debate. It's just one sign. You know, I have many other examples of things like the fast fashion industry and how much, you know, inputs goes into creating one garment of clothing. And now the newest trend is that in the fast fashion industry is that people buy a t-shirt or a blouse, whatever, a skirt, whatever it is, and they don't wear it after 1 week. Like, they wear it literally once or twice. And they, you know, so I think you're right that it starts with us taking these natural resources and producing products out of them, and companies are doing that, and they're doing it to serve our desires and interests as a society. And we've been acclimatized over time, and the trend in our consumer society to just want more and more and more and more and more, and it's out of control. It's absolutely out of control. And it bothers me too. It annoys me. And yet I'm still entrenched in it. I'm so entrenched in it, I can't get out of it. I don't know where to go. Like, I could try and go off grid and live in the forest or something, but I really don't feel like there's much choice within that. Like, the choice that we're surrounded by, the choices we're surrounded by, we don't have actually control. I mean, certainly we can choose what to buy. But to say that what we buy is what we want, to me, is not exactly true. I think it hides something. It's a truism that actually hides a whole bunch of things that are false beneath it.
It's great.
And I can see there's hands shooting up, so people must be activated.
Well, yeah.
I want to hear what they have to say, but we want to focus on causes. What are
For sure. And let's stay on this. Samantha, again, I'd like to thank you for being annoyed. What you did, which was really good, is you were annoyed and then you explained why with clear examples and reason. It wasn't just sounding off like you were tweeting something off the top of your head. You know, this was clearly thought through. That's what we do in a global class. You know, it will get passionate, but we have to explain ourselves, use good examples, use good research. So let's stay here where we are, okay? You've taken us to the right place. We have a lot of hands here, and I want to make sure we get to them, but let's make sure that everybody has a chance to contribute, and then we'll come back to Ryan. In Dublin, is there anything you want to add to where we're going now? We're getting deeper in terms of the causes of this and what we're doing to the planet and the system here, the big system. Time for the close-up. Do you want to say anything?
It was actually just relating to the sauces again. I know they were saying that it's down to what consumers want, but I think it's more so producers just looking at a way, looking to make profit. Like, it's not that they're going to have millions of people demanding new sauces. It's where they can make more money. What new sauces can they bring out that people will buy? It's not so much that people are actually demanding all of these new sauces. So you, I feel,
and I think you're agreeing. You're agreeing with Ryan in the sense that there's a system here. There's a large system that he would love to get away from.
Yeah.
And maybe one day the two of us will go live on a beach. That's right.
Yeah, I think Sean's point's really interesting. One thing that it just made me think of is people are not protesting on the street for more salad dressings. They're protesting on the streets, and there's activism around environmental causes. So it's kind of interesting to think about that.
Great. Okay, well, let's go to here. Sean, unless you have something else, we're going to go to some hands here. Thank you. Okay, so Natasha, go ahead.
So yesterday I was thinking about something that the young lady in Central had to say about natural resources.
Yeah, Samantha. It's Samantha? Yeah.
And a want for seafood,
Yes.
fish, and lobster has created like an empty sea. And that to me is the government's fault because of slack laws.
Oh, it's not the consumer's fault for wanting to eat all those fish.
I know, and yes, but that's that part of
Right.
the government was the first thing that came to my head, and then that was the next.
Poor regulation. Poor regulation. Does that make sense, Samantha, in terms of what Natasha's saying, that there's a regulation problem with government in... Go ahead. Samantha? Sure.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of the situation that happened on Easter Island, which is off the coast of Chile. They had this ancient people, like they had a society in themselves that they overused everything that they had, all their capacity, their people power, their natural resources, to the point where they became extinct. So they overconsumed from the land in order to appease them, but they never gave back to that land in order to sustain. And I think the whole thing with regards to this is sustainability. When you make a phone, you're mining minerals that are in the ground that cannot be made for 1 billion years. Like, these were things that go back to like the Mesozoic stage. Like, we can't do that. So, you know what I mean? It's these things. I don't know if I'm going off topic here, but I mean, like, I just want to.
No, Samantha, Samantha, you're a real planetary thinker, and no, do not in any way apologize. As a matter of fact, I'm going to say, I think I know where you got that example of Easter Island. Did you read Collapse by Jared Diamond? Is that coming from Collapse?
Yeah.
Yeah, you did. Okay, of course. That's a very good book, by the way, everybody, if you want to read it, about the collapse of certain civilizations in world history. Anyways, okay, so Abby, oh no, then we're going to come to St. Petersburg because I see a hand up, and Abby, go ahead. And then.
So first of all, I'm not denying there's overconsumption. There's too much consumption in the world. I agree with everyone's points that there's too much consumption in the world. But it's people who are ultimately responsible. Because when nobody wants salad dressing, right? Nobody needs salad dressing. But if somebody tells you, look, I got hot sauce here, and I got ranch here, and I got a million other things, all you need to do is pay $2 for it. People are buying it. There's a reason why they're still on shelves, because people are buying it. So a product will be on the shelf as long as people buy it. Otherwise, there's no reason to have it, right? I think when you blame society and when you blame like the government for saying they're making it easier for you to buy it, it's ultimately your choice whether to buy it or not. So blaming other people is just saying, I'm not responsible, I just have money to buy it, so I'm just buying it, right? It's ultimately your it's your money. Nobody's forcing you to give that $50.
Sure. No,
and when you say the government...
Point made.
No,
okay.
I'm sorry,
okay.
I just have one
You want to
point.
say, okay, one more thing, because we know, but these are great points. These are great points.
When you
Go
say
ahead.
the government is responsible in terms of laws, and that I think some laws are great, but I think once you go into things like product restriction, it goes down a dark road. Because first you're making sure that the poorest people can afford the product, and then you go to a darker road where government controls most of things in society. I think that's a dark road towards...
Well, there is a... Okay, let me stop for a second, because there is a very interesting thing that Abby is mentioning here about government, and Natasha brought it up, and Samantha's going there. I'm going to touch a very raw nerve here for a moment, but this is good. And I want you in St. Petersburg to get ready for this, okay? So, guys, I'm going to be asking a very tough question of you. Are you ready in St. Petersburg? Okay, if you can't answer, it's okay. Do you feel your government controls what you buy and what you think too much?
The stream is going to shut this down.
I actually think that government do not. It's actually do it by advertising, I think, because there are lots of advertising. Usually, it's for 5 minutes on television, and it's everywhere. It can be at school, it can be on streets, on television, even in social media. So I think government usually control what we buy by advertising, and we don't be happy with things we buy because of this, because of advertising. And for the
Kate, can I ask you, Kate, in Russia, who controls the advertising? Is it companies or is it the government?
It's companies and government at the same time.
Okay. I know I'm on this is a raw nerve, and I don't want to make it difficult for any of you to answer, but at the same time, we do ask tough questions in this class. So go ahead in St. Petersburg.
Do you hear me? Yes? Okay, I want to answer the question. Our government doesn't really control the consumption. It controls our following the rules, our law, but what about consumption? It's in our hands how to deal with it, what's to consume. So corporations decide what we will consume, not government, not the government.
And who owns the corporations in Russia?
Can you repeat, please?
What's your name again?
Russia.
Natasha? No. Okay.
No.
Sorry, Stacy. Stacy, I'm going to ask you another tough question, but you're going to help all of us understand something from the Russian perspective, because we're in Canada, we're thousands of miles away from you. There's Toronto, and they're close to us. There's Dublin, and they're also very far away from you too. The question is, who owns the corporations in Russia? The corporations or the government?
Corporations. The government doesn't really not control, but decide something. Everything is decided by corporations.
Okay, Stacy, fair enough. That's great. Brian, do you want? Yeah, please.
Yeah, I would like to redirect us back towards the causes of this. Historically, we know the Industrial Revolution is what increased production levels significantly all around the globe, and many countries, as we know, in a globalized context, have moved their production to other parts of the world. A lot of manufacturing is happening, and mainly that's as a result of getting around a lot of cost of compliance barriers that they experience in certain contexts. So they so they get cheap labor and they get all kinds of other things like less regulation around the environment. And you can look at many of the industries that we rely upon for our clothes and our fuel for our cars and our cars themselves and our materials for our houses, and it doesn't matter really what you pick, but there's a supply chain that reaches back to, I think as Samantha was rightly pointing out, is companies having this power to extract minerals and natural resources and start to mold them and shape them into products that they've researched that people want. And sometimes they're right that people really want those. There's a significant demand, and sometimes it's a bit of a crapshoot on their part. Some indicators show that they think people will want this. Sometimes they're trying to create a new market or a new category. And anyways, one of the issues that I think is not well, it's well known, I think, in a small sphere of environmentalists, is we talk about how there's these externalities.
Right.
That in a way we don't, like with the price that we pay for a product in a store, it never takes into consideration the true cost on our environment. And so this becomes problematic in terms of consumption and overproduction, because not only are we taking these resources and converting them into products, we're filling our society, right, with all of these choices, because we know that freedom, like think about what we think of liberty that we enjoy.
Choice.
Is choice. Predominantly, we think it's choice. Choice. Well, I believe that choice becomes a burden when live in an overproduction, overconsumption type society, which is clearly the context. So the 100 salad dressings is just a small sample of feeling the burden of like, well, what do I choose here? I'm overwhelmed in the store by salad dressings. I don't even really want salad dressing. I'd rather make it myself. So, sure. But the point here, I think, is that what are the root causes of this? Like, so we've talked about advertising and marketing being one. We've talked about maybe, I've mentioned industrialization and mass production, globalization maybe being another kind of trend.
Yes.
Well, what are some of the other ones? Like, I want to hear from you. What else do you think contributes to us? I heard people say about, almost this class thing. You want to better our lives and better ourselves and increase the kind of social status of our families. I think this is another kind of cause that's in the mixture of things. There's
upward mobility.
Yeah, upward mobility in terms of class.
Yeah, upward mobility.
I see some new hands going up there. Maybe in Toronto, I see a new hand in the background. Someone who hasn't spoken yet. We want to hear from you.
Great.
Hi, can you hear me? Yeah? Okay. So I feel that society is bombarded by this fake image of beauty, happiness, that you have to be filthy rich, that you have to look a certain way, that you have to dress a certain way, eat a certain way, believe a certain ideology that the Americans are throwing at our faces, or that corporations in our face, because everywhere we look is consumption. From the moment we get up and we go to sleep, it's advertisements, it's propaganda, buy. You're not happy? Buy a new car. You don't like the way you look? Do plastic surgery. And it's consumerism. Corporations make. Sorry, I'm kind of shaking, so I'm gonna sit down.
No, that's great. Don't sit down. When you're shaking, that means you got to keep standing. Yeah, shaking is a good thing. We'll help you stand. Okay, we're gonna help you stay up. Keep going. Keep going.
The government doesn't care about its people. I'm studying social work. They don't care. As long as they're making money, as long as the country's making money, as long as people are consuming and buying and getting to debt, they don't care. Corporations have more control of what happens in Canada and the United States than the people. They think we have freedom of choice. They think we have democracy. It's not democracy. Capitalists have controlled the country. Now we have a problem. Sorry.
Good. Go ahead. Yeah. What's the problem? What's the problem?
That I feel people have to start taking care of themselves, start loving themselves, start being happy with what they have, and not replace it with materialism. Because other countries are being exploited by corporations because of the policies and regulations that are not protecting the citizens in those countries. So when an iPhone costs $1,000 here to buy, but over there it's like $5, there is a problem. Yes, you have the iPhone, amazing, yeah, I love this phone. Well, I don't love it, but I have the phone. But how many people in India, in Africa, are being exploited for the resources that are being stolen? And
Sure.
everybody's like, oh, poor them, poor this, poor that. Then we have to change our mentalities and stop consuming, stop over-consuming, buy things that you need, not things that you want. And I think
Okay, can I stop you? Let me stop you for a second. Only because I want to make sure everyone has a chance. What you said is brilliant. You put it very passionately and with great clarity. What's your name again?
Hernando.
Hernando?
Yes.
With an H? Yeah, Hernando. So Hernando, you've spread a whole bunch of seeds in this class now, and they're growing, and we've got to manage this little garden at the moment. Now, first, I know Ryan. Did you want to say something to that?
And then go to the back here. There's
okay.
a gentleman in the back there that's kind of
okay, Corey. Yeah. Do you want to get the microphone back to Corey, and then you can stand? Absolutely, and then we'll move it around. Okay, so. Corey?
So yeah, I wanted to add on a point that Hernando said, and also bringing it back to the core of what Ryan was saying of the cause of this consumerism, right? Where I honestly think that because we can, because not a lot of people, like what Hernando said, care about the future. They're going to die in X amount of years, right, or however long they live, right? The human expectancy. They don't care about the future. They want to like make as much money as they can now. Like when you go into a store and you see all these options of clothing, right? Where you're just like, oh wow, like I've never seen that before. It's like the consumers are happy because they see something new, and the corporations are happy because they're making money off something that's new, right? And it's really as simple as, I think, because we can. We can consume as much.
So what's the...
We shouldn't, but...
I want to just... Hold on for a second. Yeah. Stay standing, Corey. What's the critical question we are now trying to answer? Because it started with Samantha, and she's been taking us to some deeper places. Hernando had a great thing. But I just want to make sure we're staying on the critical thing about cause. So what's the question that we're trying to address right now?
Well, so originally, we started with some signs. Now we're into causes and trying to identify causes. But I think we're jumping around a little bit, and that's okay because that's happened.
Yeah, I just want to make sure we're building towards cause, solution,
I think we really are. I think there's some interesting points that are being made that I would just like to follow up on because I think they actually bring us forward in the conversation.
Okay.
And so I think sorry,
Corey?
What was your name?
It's Corey. Yeah,
Corey. Great comments, and Hernando, awesome. Like really great. I felt like you could write a manifesto. Like honestly, it's great. And so I feel that energy, and I feel it too. So one thing that Hernando said was that governments. I heard you say that they're making money. It's all about making money, and I agree with that. I agree with that, and the governments are actually making money, and it's not intuitively because we
the governments or the corporations.
Corporations are definitely making money. But this is what I'm trying to say: is that governments are actually making money. Wait a second, we don't normally think of that. Well, how are governments making money with this overconsumption, overproduction? So let's just think about it. So I would like to pose that, and then I want to go back to something Corey said and follow up on that, because I think he said something extremely profound when he said, we shouldn't, but we can.
We can.
And you said that with real passion, and I think that's actually a very insightful statement. It's a philosophical and a fundamentally ethical judgment that you just made. And although you just said it, like point blank, right, I think it's actually very insightful. So let's start first with how the heck do governments make money off this type of society?
Wow. Okay.
Over here.
Okay, Avery, go ahead, and then we're going to come to St. Petersburg and Dublin if there's anything. But Avery, please, go ahead.
2 points I'd like to make. One for Abanoff and one for Samantha. The first point is actually a perfect example of what Abanoff was talking about that happened the last month or so. about consumer buying power. EA, big publisher in North America, releases a new Star Wars game, completely unconsumer-friendly practices in it, and so the buyers boycotted with their wallets. We chose, as consumers, not to buy the product he presented us with, and as a result, their stock lost $3 billion in value.
Who's this? This is a EA?
Yeah. Electronics Arts.
Okay, Electronics Arts.
Yeah,
okay.
and so they lost a huge market share there because as consumers, we chose not to buy their product. We chose to vote with our wallets. And
Sure.
so I think that's why, in reality, the consumer has the most power there, because we have that ability to vote with our wallets and tell the corporations, no, we don't like your practices. We don't like what you're giving us. Give us something different or we won't buy your product.
Okay, understood. This is excellent. I just want to, but before, because part of the global class is getting different perspectives, and both you and Abhinav kind of agree on the consumer's ultimate choice. Sean, in Dublin, did you hear what Avery just said about the fact that, you know, it is the consumer in the end, and Electronic Arts, big company, huge hit in, I take it, market share, or because of the consumer stock price, because of consumer
it was
$3 billion. Do you have anything to add to that, or anybody else in Dublin, about perhaps seeing it differently, or do you agree, more or less? It's ultimately the consumer.
It's coming back up.
I'm not really sure, to be honest.
Okay.
I can't really argue with it.
All right. If anybody has anything to add there, no problem. I'm always just seeking different perspectives.
Can I pose a question?
Hold on a second. Because I saw in St. Petersburg, I think there was a hand up. Yeah, please, go ahead.
I wanted to add about government. What does he do in the economics? Because companies and government are doing this together, but companies mostly care about these questions like, how do I make my products better than my competitors? How can we decrease our costs and something like that? But government mostly care about money, about profits. So I want to say that companies care about the goods, and companies care about the consumers, but government mostly think about it money.
Yeah, I think we need to unpack this a little bit more, because I haven't heard enough comments about this question about governments making money. Because, so listen, part of what we want to say, and I agree with, like, I have to say, like, I've been a big advocate for many years of voting with your dollars, and so I don't contest the fact that consumers have a lot of power as to what they buy. But here's another question, like, just consider it from the angle. Why do governments not really regulate industry that strongly? I mean, certainly they have in some areas, but on a whole, like from a holistic perspective, if you look at the way governments are intervening or not intervening in many cases in regulating industry, in many cases they are not doing it. They are absolutely not doing it strongly enough to influence the way that industries operate. And so, if, you know, like, why? The question is, why do they not step in and really regulate much more strongly? So I think this is, right. You know, and what's in it for them? Like, what's the profit motive? Because if government, like, look, I want to say one thing. Okay, I'm just going to say it because I was hoping somebody would say it. But governments make income tax. They make they charge industry taxes. And where do they make the most income? Where do they make the most income? Because it's interesting that it corresponds often to these key economic indicators.
Okay, so great, we've got hands, and also to go back to Natasha's point, if government were regulating the fishing industry better, in your view, Natasha, then perhaps there wouldn't be so much depletion of fish. It's not the problem of the consumption on our end that we want fish. It's the problem that governments are not regulating the control of that fish. Right?
To tie in what we talked about on November 22nd.
Yes.
Each place they go to fish, the government taxes them.
So if it's in Dublin, if it's in St. Petersburg, if it's in Nova Scotia,
Yes.
each time they transfer that fish, they're being taxed on it, and that way each government is getting a bit of money.
Right.
So
Okay.
The fact is that that's how the government makes the
Well-
lower places that we can transfer. Like we talked about the
Sure.
peppers, we talked about the buttons, we talked about the little pieces that have to come from here and there.
Absolutely. That's the global supply chain that makes... Well, let's stop for a second. There's a lot of good points being made, and I want to remind everybody of one fact of life here, which we can't deny, which is we have about 15 minutes left in this class, just so you know. And I just want to, and I also want to give Ryan a chance, Abby, hold on, Ryan a chance to go to where he wanted to go, which is sort of solutions and how things can improve. And why don't we take it there and make sure we park ourselves there for the rest of the class so that we can get off the problem and think about solutions a little bit more. And I'm sure Samantha and Hernando and others at Centennial, as well as in St. Petersburg, will probably have something to say about this. But is that okay, everybody? We're going to start talking about solution. Paul? Yeah, Paul in Dublin? Hold on, Abby. Yeah.
Yeah, just to make a comment, Lon, on Ryan's question. I think governments are driven by tax and profit and the need to make income tax. And say, for example, here they make a lot of money here in Ireland out of fuel, for example. In fact, the largest proportion of a gallon or a litre of fuel is made, the largest proportion of it is tax. But I think the other thing that is allowing governments to get away with it, if I can say, is the fact that they don't come under pressure. So there isn't a lobby is sort of agitating for change. And I think the root cause of that, I think, is, the knowledge that consumers have. I think there's a big issue around knowledge and belief. I mean, the discussion that we're having here about some of the issues would pass by many people in the street. They're simply not aware of the issues. And I was particularly taken by two points earlier on. One is the notion of planned obsolescence. In other words, where we're forced to change our batteries every 2 years. The idea of fast fashion. And then the idea of external cost. Just a little example that I had myself, which I shared with a class here yesterday. I lost a pair of headphones that I use with my phone for listening to music. And there is a German discount store that operates in Dublin. They're called Lidl. I don't know if they're in Canada or Russia. But they were selling headphones for something like €3.50, which might be, say, about $5 Canadian. And I bought 2 of them. And I said, how could they make them for this price? So there I was consuming. I was just this throwaway. Well, if I lose another pair, I have this pair here. Anyway, I don't want to hog the conversation anymore, but I thought that was really sort of interesting, the points about this external cost. Thanks.
Yeah. A hand back in Centennial. I see, is that Hernando or somebody? Hernando?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I like talking.
Go ahead.
So I had the same conversation with a group of friends that I've met recently, and I feel that we should start with the children. From the moment kids are, born and in our homes, we are bombarding them with gifts. We teach them that if we love them, we buy them as many gifts as we can. They grow up appreciating more gifts than being with the family. Well, these kids grow up and go to school and get brainwashed by what the institutions are teaching them, what the kids in the schools are teaching them, what they're watching on television, on their iPads, on the internet. We need to start monitoring and controlling what they're watching, because parents are so busy and consumed with their lives, they're not focusing or noticing what the kids are watching on television. And unfortunately, television has a lot of propaganda, a lot of hidden messages, and they're being brainwashed. These kids are going to grow up to be consumers. And it's going to be a circle that is never going to end. Everybody in this room is self-aware and knows how bad consumption is. But outside in the real world, everybody is glued to their TVs, to their cell phones, and to their internet. We need to start this and work with the children.
Okay, Hernando, point made. Again, children, we got to go there. The solution is the next generation. Excellent. Ryan, do you want to say?
I want to say, and I'm also conscious of the hands up. So,
yeah. And St. Petersburg, we've got 3 hands, so hold the hands for a sec, okay? Give them a chance.
Yeah, so one thing, I think Hernando brought up a point that I think is really important, and it starts to get to solutions thinking.
Sure.
So, and I think I need to just say, okay, whose responsibility is it is a trick question, because it forces you to have to try and pick one of these traditional actors in the system. And I don't believe it's any of their responsibility. It's actually all of their responsibility. So it's everyone and no one's responsibility at the same time. And this is part of the context of like always being able to point in a circle. It's your responsibility. It's not mine. Like, it's easy to say, well, it's not my responsibility as a consumer. It's also easy for governments to make money for tax revenue in order to be able to do their job, not regulate the industry, and then actually have to use the revenue they get from industry to actually deal with the problems that are created by industry and the non-regulation. It's a vicious circle. It's a totally broken, dysfunctional
okay, so
system.
how do we start breaking it? How do we start going and get you out of the trap? Get you out of the trap.
I want to go back to Corey's point and Hernando's point, which are fundamentally related. One is Corey said we shouldn't, but we can.
Yeah.
And I think this is a really interesting point. So, and I want to point to something that in social change theory and social normativity, and I've studied philosophy, and normativity is something philosophers do a lot of talking about, but this idea that there's these norms operating in the background, and that there are these kind of unwritten regulatory things that guide and constrain our behavior and actions that we're not usually that aware of. So these things are going on, and I would say to you that we often know that we shouldn't be buying the 2 pairs of headphones or the 5 different types of dressing I have in my fridge.
Yeah.
I know that I don't need it or that I shouldn't buy it, and I still do it because I can. And this brings me to a point that I think is so fundamental, which is that knowing is not enough. Awareness is not enough. It may be a starting point, but knowing, like how many people who are overweight know how to lose weight? I would say every single one of them. Yeah. Every single one of them know how to lose weight, and knowing does not change their behavior. So I think
what does?
Well, this is
he's
the
a
question.
philosopher. Okay.
This is the question I want to focus on for the last few minutes.
Okay, great. So, excellent, Ryan. Thank you.
St. Petersburg.
St. Petersburg, guys, go ahead.
I wanted to say about the solutions. We need to change a habit to a choice. So we need to think about, do we need it when we go to a shop or to a store? For example, when you buy everyday takeaway coffee, do you need it? Is it for your comfort, your survival, or is it just your luxuries? Do you want to buy it every day, and do you actually need it? So we need to change the way we think and change the way we see the world and consumption, and we need to change the system with the government and with all of the companies which are standing inside of this system. And yes, this is it.
I have two solutions to this problem. Firstly, we should decouple the link between happiness and consumption. So there are basic necessities like food and shelter, but consuming additional products will not make us any happier. Just think about it. And also, we should educate ourselves and others about the true impacts of our consumption. So before buying a new cell phone, just we should think and to be aware of how that decision will affect the environment, and think hard about whether the negative impacts are justified. So that's all.
I want to add that we about solution. We have to think on our own. What do I mean? It's hard to negate that marketers now don't affect on our choice because we have multiple stimuli every day from the moment we wake up, like from the logos on our toothpaste to the cereal box at breakfast, a morning cup of coffee from the nearby franchise and something like that. And then we go to the work on our branded car or in our wearing our branded clothes. So we met the people that have experienced the simple stimuli. We just do what these advertisements say. We buy these goods which we don't need, and we just have to think, do we need them or not? We have to change our mind about that, and it's very hard, but we have to do that. Also,
can I stop you for a sec? Sorry, just want to stop you because I want to make sure we have everyone given a chance because we've got only about 7 minutes left, and I want to make sure Dublin and also Centennial, possibly in this direction, may have something to say in the end. I'm sorry to cut you off, but it's time. But we can have another conversation, no problem. We can have another class and explore this. But let's make sure that everyone, the students, have a chance to address the solution in the end, what we need to be doing to solve this, to get ourselves out of this, as Ryan has talked about and others, this systemic trap that we seem to be in, a system we're in, that's very difficult to kind of break out of. So let's give Dublin a chance to address this. Finally, then we'll go to Centennial. Then we'll come back to Ryan and here, and we'll basically be done. So, Paul, in Dublin, or any students, what should we do? It's okay. You can think.
Yeah, you can go on to one of the other campuses, okay. And we'll have a think about it here.
I'm not even sure I could answer the question I just asked. So, but I have to ask it. Now, Samantha, okay, speak, please.
Okay, so Ryan was saying that awareness isn't, it's a stepping stone, but doesn't stop there. And I think that if we do get awareness out, and we try and create the programs in which we need to alleviate these issues, try and see if we can cut out the middleman, that type of thing. And, we know what the issues are. Can we not advocate and try to change the policies, like the policymakers? Can we not advocate? Can we not protest? Can we not, this is our lives. This is the human race that we're talking about ultimately, right? So, like policymakers, I think that, yes, awareness is great. We know what we need to do. We need to get more of the word out, and we need to be able to contact the government and, push it. Yes, there was also that, buying power was one of the ways that we would be able to protest. But go straight to it. What else is
Samantha, I'm just going to say one thing, and then we're going to come back here. I'm not going to let you off the hook. I'm going to ask you a tough question, too, because you're a big girl, and like everybody else here, I'm a big boy, and we can ask ourselves these tough questions. What are you doing in your own life as a person to address this problem? Stop speaking in the we and speak in the I.
Okay.
Are you doing anything?
For myself, I have 3 children.
Whoa.
I came from, I'm one of the older students. So
okay, you got my respect.
Bungalow, I've had the whole shebang, big yard, My husband and I had decided that we overconsume. This is ridiculous. There are so much things that we're spending on, housing, packaging at Costco, all these things that we're over-consuming, electronics, everything. And so we've actually downsized. We live in an Econo townhouse. We have, we've really downsized. We don't have a yard anymore. You know what I mean? It's an Econo townhouse complex. We have 4 squares in our backyard. We don't need all that space. We garden in urban settings, like urban community gardens. We garden in the summertime. We get our fruits and vegetables from sustainable food programs. Like, we've actually cut down the usage of electricity to where we're saving total income, expenditure that we were maybe doing $5,000 a month, and we're down to, I would say maybe $3,500. So I mean, we did realize as a family that we were over-consuming, and we are working towards doing that, you know what I mean, individually.
Thank you for sharing that, Samantha.
It's great to hear these examples of individual actions that do make a difference and add up to a lot. Maybe we want to go to
We'll finally give Abhinav and Avery, because they're anxious, and then Ryan.
Their arms are almost breaking from being held up.
But you'll have, and then you can at the end, okay? And then we'll be done. So we have about 4 minutes left. So guys,
really quick,
yeah, go ahead. Make your point.
So I think one concrete solution would be the use of biogas. So I don't know if you guys know, but my mom's going to be watching, so she did this. She used to be a professor in one of the top universities in India. So in her university, she established a biogas machine kind of thing. So it uses all the kitchen waste and the food waste that's been thrown out by students who eat in the cafeteria.
Mm-hmm.
And it uses the gas that's produced by the waste to cook the food. So I think that's a good way to
biogas.
Yeah, I think we could do some. People who are interested could do some research on it. So it uses the waste to cook the food. So the pollution is the same, but you're cutting out one part, which is you don't have to extract something from the earth. You just use the waste you already have to.
It's great. Can we have your mom as a guest sometime?
Oh,
then that's
I'm
the
sure
next
my mom
guest.
would love that.
Abby's mom. Okay, excellent. Okay,
So I think that's a
biogas. No, but that's a very good point. Okay, Avery, go ahead.
I'd just like to bring up a point that I think a lot of people here are going to disagree with based off what's been said. But I think more government regulation is actually would cause more harm than good, and that industry self-regulation is the answer for 2 reasons. One, when the government makes regulations, it's like a line in the sand. That line can always be redrawn on, and that can be a bad thing. Right now it might be, yeah, these are all good things they're regulating, helping the planet. But what happens in 10 years when these start doing things that are unconsumer friendly and hurt the people for other reasons, because that line can always be redrawn. The other thing is it bottlenecks industry by forced regulation. It might not hurt big companies like Walmart so much, but I'm a big proponent of small business and people making a profit on their own self-sustainability. And so if you start saying, oh, you can only get resources from these spots, well, the price is going to go up, so small business can't sustain itself anymore because it can't afford.
Okay, I'm going to stop you and say, is it fair to say that in the headline for what you said is, beware of big government?
Yeah.
Beware of government.
And small business.
Beware and support small business.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. Okay, that's great. That's great. I want to give, because we've only got a minute left, and so Ryan, please, and then we're
I'll let
done.
you have it from my perspective then in 1 minute or less. So for me, I agree with a lot of the things that have been said. It's no easy solution for sure. But I think we need to, there's things that individuals can do, but I think we need to be looking at the systems level. So, our government in Canada is doing a few things that I think are really great. Our provincial government and our federal government are talking about a waste-free Ontario Act and a Waste-Free Canada Act, which would actually be an act of legislation that would start to set very ambitious targets for our nation, and our provinces and our municipalities would have to follow suit. And these, I don't know how they're going to achieve them, but they're setting ambitious targets. Actually, sometimes when governments set ambitious targets, it tends to be, to make themselves look good and get reelected.
Right.
So I'm always slightly skeptical of that. At the same time, I think if we don't set ambitious targets, we don't look to systemic solutions, because we don't really have to rearrange the traditional actors and the power dynamics and really kind of make systemic change. So the other thing that I think is happening is there's this whole emerging social movement around social innovation, which is small business. A lot of it is small social enterprise businesses that are doing things differently. So they're operating on traditional economic principles and incorporating those, but they're doing business really differently. Like Furniture Bank, for example, we're working with right now, they are collecting like hundreds of thousands of pieces of furniture that would go into landfill and repurposing that furniture so that it doesn't go into landfill. And they're giving it to families and actually charging the people who donate the furniture to them. So when you think about the aging population and how many people in our society that will be downsizing, their houses, and so the idea is to start to basically redirect and match that furniture to other people who need it. So this is
smart.
This is a good idea. I mean, it's smart from many different perspectives. It serves a social need. It certainly has a positive impact on the environment and reduces the negative effects. So these are the types of solutions I think we need a lot more of, and then we need to finance them. And this is part of the problem too, is we don't have an established finance mechanism for these new types of innovative solutions. And I believe, just like any other, they need to be seeded and grown with some capital. And so, our things that are happening here, which I think are interesting, is the credit unions are all coming together around something called social finance. And same with the federal government has created a strategy. They're working on it. It'll be out next April. And they're starting a green bank, which will, basically fund or help subsidize new sorts of economically viable green energy or green economy type solutions. And so I think these are systemic change things that are happening. So but notice every actor needs to be taking part. And I think the consumer probably needs to become more and more and more aware. And as I said, knowing is not enough. Really, the behavior is like they need to start making tough choices when they're out there in the marketplace, and hopefully starting to choose to buy things that are new and innovative or smaller based businesses and solutions that really make a difference.
Okay, let me stop only because we're a little bit over and students have to go, some of them to classes. Yes, I want to continue. First, I just want to say finally, social innovation is a key point there. There's always opportunity in crisis. Problems are not problems, it's just change. And human beings have the imagination to come up with new solutions, I think. But first and finally, I want to thank everybody for an absolutely wonderful conversation. It was just like, a real exploration. And hope to see you all in another global class. And Ryan, for coming and sitting in here with students of the world, a busy guy, and he's engaging everybody in these big, important issues. We will have another global class together, guaranteed. So take care, and we'll see you soon, guys. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody.
See you.
Great comments.
Okay, so...
The conference is now secured. The conference is now in an unsecured mode.